What really causes something to happen? It's a question we bump into all the time, right? Whether we're thinking about our own habits or big government policies. Well, today, we're going to dig into a Nobel Prize-winning idea that totally flipped the script on how we find those answers, especially when we're dealing with messy, real-world data. So let's start with a fun one. It's a fact that on days when ice cream sales shoot up, so do the number of shark attacks. So what's the deal? Does eating a scoop of chocolate fudge brownie somehow put you on a shark's radar? No, of course not. But it's a perfect example of how two things can be connected in a super misleading way, and that gets right to the heart of a huge problem in data. And that problem is telling the difference between correlation and causation. See, correlation just means two things happen to move together, like the ice cream and the sharks. But causation, that's the holy grail. That means one thing actually makes the other thing happen. In our little example, the real cause is a hidden factor: hot weather. Hot weather makes more of us want to buy ice cream, and it makes more of us go swimming in the ocean. Being able to tell these two things apart is one of the biggest challenges in science.
So why is finding that actual cause and effect so darn difficult? Well, for researchers who are trying to tackle society's biggest questions, this isn't just a fun little riddle. It's a massive, massive roadblock.
Okay, so in a perfect world, scientists have this incredibly powerful tool to figure all this out. It's the good old scientific experiment, usually what's called a randomized controlled trial, or an RCT. And it is considered the absolute gold standard because it's designed to zero in on one single factor and measure its true impact.
The whole idea is just beautifully simple. You start with two groups that are basically identical. Then you give a treatment, say a new medicine, or maybe a new way of teaching, to just one of those groups. The other group, the control group, gets nothing, or a placebo. And since the only significant difference between them was that treatment, any difference you see in the results, well, it pretty much had to be caused by.
But, and this is a huge but, what about the really big, messy questions we have about society? Like, what's the real actual dollar value of staying in school for one extra year? You can't exactly run a perfect, clean experiment for something like that.
I mean, just think about it for a second. It would be totally unethical, not to mention impossible. You can't just grab two identical groups of kids and randomly tell half of them, sorry, you have to drop out of high school, just so you can check in on their bank accounts 20 years from now. The gold standard method just completely falls apart when you get to real life.
So for decades, this problem really had economists and other social scientists totally stuck. All they had were these messy correlations. But then, a couple of researchers came up with this incredibly clever new way to look at the problem. An idea so powerful, it would eventually win them the Nobel Prize.
And those researchers were Joshua Angrist and Guido Imbens. You can think of them as the architects of a whole new way to find cause and effect, not in some sterile lab, but out in the wild, chaotic real world.
And in 2021, their work was recognized at the highest level. They were awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. The official reason? For their methodological contributions to the analysis of causal relationships. That's a fancy way of saying they gave us a reliable way to find the real story hiding in the data. So what was this revolutionary idea? Well, they realized that sometimes the world itself kind of accidentally runs experiments for us. You just have to be smart enough to see them. They called this idea a natural experiment. Okay, so a natural experiment is basically any situation where, just because of some weird rule or a quirk of geography or just plain old random luck, people get sorted into a treatment group and a control group, almost like a scientist did it on purpose.
And this gets us right back to our big education question. Angrist and Inmans found an absolutely brilliant natural experiment hiding in something we all have, something that's totally random, the month you were born.
Okay, check this out. Most school systems have a hard cutoff date for when a kid can start kindergarten. And there are laws that say you have to stay in school until you're, let's say, 16. Well, because of those two rules, kids born late in the year, say October, November, December, actually end up being forced to stay in school for a few months longer than the kids who were born early in the year, like in January or February.
And when they looked at the data, it was crystal clear. On average, people born in that last quarter of the year had just a little bit more schooling than people born in the first quarter. And the magic here is that your birth month is completely random. It has nothing to do with your family background, or how smart you are, or how ambitious you are. It's pure chance that created these two different groups.
And that is the big aha moment. All of a sudden, they had two groups of people who were randomly assigned by nothing more than their birthday to slightly different amounts of schooling.
So by comparing the incomes of these two groups over their lifetimes, they could finally filter out all the other noise and isolate the true causal effect of that little bit of extra education. Now, this was way more than just one clever study. It was a blueprint. It gave us a whole new way of looking at the world and the data it generates. It kicked off what a lot of people now call the causal revolution.
See, what Angrist and Embens really gave us wasn't just a single answer. It was a whole new toolbox for researchers. They built the statistical foundation that lets us spot these natural experiments and, with confidence, figure out what's really causing what. They turned everyday data into something almost as powerful as a real experiment.
And the impact has been just huge. This way of thinking has completely transformed one field after another. Researchers have used these kinds of methods to figure out everything from how much class size really matters for students, to the true effect of military service on your career, and even which policing strategies actually reduce crime. And this is really why it all matters so much to every one of us. By finally being able to get past simple correlation and get closer to actual causation, these tools help our leaders and policymakers make smarter, better decisions. It means we can build better schools, create more effective health programs, and design fairer policies, all based on actual evidence of what works. So this whole causal revolution leaves us with a pretty fascinating challenge. Because once you know what to look for, you start seeing these potential natural experiments hiding everywhere. So the real question is, what other truths are just sitting out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to find them?